with another challenge. Today's challenge is a salt challenge. I need you to like this video and comment hashtag salt challenge. Duet this.
Salt challenge.
I've seen this done a couple of times on a couple of different videos, and I'm not quite sure this is real, and I just want to see what's up.
I got, the nice tostitas, salsa. They're friends to the tortilla chips, friends to your sour cream and onion potato chips, and all the rest. I like this better than French onion dip. Two, pick on the bag.
Hey guys, Max Sand here. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and share the video and subscribe. So today, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the neurological implications of social media engineering, likes, dislikes, and dopamine on the human brain. Dopamine is like the happy feel-good chemical you get from happy feel-good things, like when somebody says something nice to you, or you get an extra $1 in your paycheck, or somebody likes your post on social media. And so what we're doing here is we're looking at why that might change the way you think, act, behave in real life, and maybe even your own personality. I can't keep fucking doing this fucking shit. I fucking hate the fucking bull. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Max Sand here. This is the Maxian Position, and today I want to talk about a bigger, deeper topic, which is why this is not going to be a one-take video, because there's a lot to go over here. And that topic is social engineering in social media and the effects that these techniques have on you. Yes, you, if you're here and you're watching this video, you're as affected as I am, as everybody else is. So the first thing we need to do is, what is social engineering, and why do I consider social media engineering to be kind of different but to the same end? So social engineering is a top-down effort to influence particular attitudes and social behaviors on a large scale, as taken from the Wikipedia, which is obviously not the best source for information, but is useful for these purposes today. Most often undertaken by governments, but can be carried out by media, academia, or private groups in order to produce desired characteristics in a target population. Social engineering can also be understood philosophically as a deterministic phenomenon where the intentions and goals of the architects of the new social construct are realized. Some social engineers use the scientific method to analyze and understand social systems in order to design the appropriate methods to achieve the desired results in human subjects. Here's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be top-down, because of the decentralized nature of social media, the peer-to-peer connections. Though some of the things that are being engineered, and we see this a lot in the political sphere, which we talk quite a bit about here on the Maxian Position, if you look outside of that, you suddenly start to understand that most, if not all, social engineering that is occurring on social media is peer-to-peer, decentralized, and completely organic, based on a few key factors of how social media works and how it affects your brain. And that's what we're going to go over today. So one thing that we're going to look at is the diminished memory experienced by many social media users over long periods of time. This is particularly effective in the TikTok sphere, but it is across all social media. And so this is actually a published study that is entitled "Media Usage Diminishes Memory for Experiences." This is from the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, and we're just going to look at the abstract real quick because I think it makes the point, and we don't need to get into every detail of these articles, but I do want you to see the sources and what I'm looking at to come to these conclusions, or what I'm taking away from what I'm seeing here. So people increasingly use social media to record and share their experiences, but it is unclear whether or how social media use changes those experiences. Here we present both naturalistic and controlled studies in which participants engage in an experience while using social media to record or share their experiences with others, or not engaging with media. We collected objective measures of participants' experiences, scores on a surprise memory test, as well as subjective measures of participants' experiences, self-reports about their engagement and enjoyment. Across 3 studies, participants without media consistently remembered their experience more precisely than participants who used media. There is no conclusive evidence that media use impacted subjective measure of experience. Together, these findings suggest that using media may prevent people from remembering the very events that they're attempting to preserve. Well, that makes perfect sense from a logical standpoint. Why would I really take every little thing in when I'm going to have a video of the event anyway? And I can put that on social media and it'll be there in a year or 10 years when I come back. This is just a small sample of simple ways that social media can and does affect your brain and how you experience the world around you. But it's far from the most concerning. So what's happening here is people are replacing actual events and experiences with the cataloging them on social media. By itself, I don't think that this is all that big a deal. And certainly a lot of more rational people are going to be like, well, yeah, but is that really that important? Can I just have the pictures? Why would I just not take pictures of anything? And that's, of course, never what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that this is an effect that you should be aware of, that you're less likely to remember and more likely to rely on your pictures or your videos later on. This can have a pretty staggering effect on anchoring your memory in your brain into the eternal present, rather than having any foot in the past. And that might not be a big deal if you were talking about the past of like the meta of world events, but you're talking about your own experiences in the past. You're talking about not being able to remember your own life. And then remember that you watching this video are likely an adult. Do you remember much about when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? Probably not as much as you'd like. Probably not as much as you even think. A lot of it is probably memories that you are remembering through being recited back to you by parents and family members, relatives, and friends who they remember it, or maybe they remember the story that they've been telling for 20 years. Imagine then if your minimal memory of being a child, that you have standout moments that you've experienced or things that really resonated with you and stayed with you for whatever reason. Imagine if you had less of those. Imagine if you didn't have any. Imagine if your childhood could only be relayed to you through pictures. And then imagine if those pictures were taken away. So this is an important but small part of what we're talking about today in how social media can influence you. What's more to the point when we talk about social media engineering is this article from the National Library of Medicine. and it is regarding the rewarding nature of social interactions. Obviously, the objective of this short review is to highlight rewarding aspects of social interactions for humans and discuss their neural basis. Thereby, we report recent research findings to illustrate how social stimuli in general are processed in the reward system and highlight the role of theory of mind as one mediating process for experiencing social reward during social interactions. Basically, this is talking about how if you are given a reward, right, it makes you more likely to want to do that process again because it releases dopamine, among other effects within the brain. You get a positive feedback from your own body so that you are being conditioned now that that is the way to get that positive feedback from your body. It's almost like, to a lesser extent, maybe not as extreme, drug use, where the drug user gets this positive effect that they feel, and so that they want to do that again. In this case, it's a much lower key effect, obviously, and maybe it's also got a lower key long-term downside, right? The heroin user faces the problem of death or disease or just addiction that ruins their life, whereas the person getting a pat on the back for a good job at work maybe faces a little bit of anxiety in trying to get more pats on the back so that they can get a promotion and in a better standing and make more money, right? So it's not quite the same, but it does affect people. And the significance of social interactions in human behavior is also reflected in several psychiatric disorders where impairments in social interaction are either an integral part of the diagnosis, e.g., autism spectrum disorder, schizophrenia, and social phobia, or relevant for experienced psychological strain. Accordingly, the topic of social interaction has increasingly been addressed in the field of psychiatry and psychotherapy, as well as the cognitive neurosciences, which is more what we want to focus on here. But it's relevant in psychiatry as well as neurosciences. But the neurosciences are kind of what I think is the big deal about this topic, and we'll kind of unfold more and more of that as we go through here. The present review provides an overview on recent findings. Yeah, so it's basically long version of what I was just saying. But here's where it gets important. Various psychiatric disorders are characterized by difficulties in social interactions, whereas patients with borderline personality disorder have difficulties to maintain social relationships. Patients with social phobia are afraid of initiating social interactions, or patients with schizophrenia who misinterpret social cues. Both in patients with autism spectrum disorder and patients with schizophrenia, the reduced capability to developing TOM is considered a pivotal deficit. So the idea that they can't create that feedback loop of getting the positive feedback and then creating kind of the connection between that and the good fifis that you get from the dopamine. I know a lot of people understand this, but it's really key in understanding as we go further into specifically about social media, that it's a very basic system that we are wired this way, that a positive social reaction gives us dopamine and makes us feel good. And it can be as large as being rewarded with food that we like, or money, or sex, or just positive attention from a friend, family member, someone of the opposite sex, someone of the same sex, whatever you consider positive. The more positive you consider it, the larger the dopamine hit that you're going to get. And it is like a drug, and we are wired that way. The reason that drugs work at all is because our brains are wired to onboard that type of positive feedback, because we are social animals and we need to find ways to work within a social system. And in fact, since we've become more agrarian, I would argue that it's much more pronounced, because the downside of not onboarding this kind of positive reaction, dopamine, do the same thing again kind of cycle is much more devastating, or at least it was for many, many years of human history, than if you're just a guy in a cave, right? And if you piss off the guy down the street, oh, well, it's not that big a deal. You didn't really trade with him. You didn't rely on him for anything. But then when you're living in a community that's a bunch of farmers, and unless you're specifically propelled through getting your food and everything else you need, you do rely on those other people. And then even more so as we got into like cities and empires and things like that, you're reliant on all the people around you because everybody has a little piece in the puzzle. So this kind of cycle, the dopamine cycle, is extremely important to our survival, and not just as a species, but as a human individual. And social media is just feeding into that cycle, but what you're getting out of it becomes less and less over time. So the next thing we want to look at is this study here: uses and gratification sought by pre-adolescent, adolescent TikTok consumers. Now, I don't want to jump right to TikTok, but it is kind of the ultimate short-term version of what we're talking about here, so it's kind of important. So now we understand that there is a dopamine cycle where it's positive reaction to behavior, dopamine hit internally, and then striving to repeat that behavior to get the positive reaction, and it goes in a circle. Here we have TikTok. So the purpose of this paper was to explore the uses and gratifications sought by the primary target market, pre-adolescent and adolescent groups, of new social media site TikTok. The paper also sought to identify how much of a role the motivations of self-expression, social recognition, and fame-seeking, important considerations within adolescent psychology development, played in the use of this particular social networking site. Now, I would argue fame-seeking is the same thing as social recognition. It's just on a larger scale. And so they both feed into the cycle. Now, the self-expression part is kind of an internal part. It is part of the cycle too, as in if I express myself in a way and I get that positive reaction, right? But some positive reaction doesn't always have to come from how you express yourself. The positive reaction can come from, I shoveled a very large pile of shit, and then the guy who needed that shit shoveled come over and he patted me on the back, right? So it doesn't always have to come from social expression, but it very much can. So I created this flowchart to kind of describe the cycle that I'm talking about, calling it the social media engineering cycle. You may have seen it put in other things. It's very similar, if not identical, to the addiction cycle that you see put out there commonly, although I won't use the term addiction because it's not about the addiction that I'm really getting at here. It's more about the social engineering aspect of it. So obviously step one is when you post content. This can be you posting a video to TikTok, YouTube, whatever. This can be you making a post on Facebook. This can be you commenting on somebody else's post. Any type of content for you to make online falls under this category. And then it feeds into positive engagement. Now, negative engagement doesn't necessarily break the cycle, but positive engagement furthers the cycle. So that's what we're going to focus on here. This can be likes, thumbs up, upvotes, shares, retweets, you name it, the lot. This can be people just giving you a mild like, hey, that's a good job, a bunch of likes, or you gaining viral attention over a long period of time. Whatever it may be, you've now posted the content and got a positive feedback on that content, which leads you to the dopamine reception from the positive feedback. Now, this is important because this is what reinforces that your initial behavior was good, and therefore you've now got good boy points and a head pat and told that you've done a good job to some degree or another. And obviously, the amount of dopamine reception you're going to get is going to vary based on how much positive engagement that you got, but you're going to get it, and that makes you feel very good. It is very much like a mild euphoria, a drug. And that leads to the next part, which is the bottom middle here, and it says behavior modified to get more dopamine, strategy adapted towards more likes. So now you've realized that this gets you positive behavior. If you took it the other way around and you replaced the upper right with negative engagement, you would actually learn, instead of dopamine reception from positive feedback, you would get dopamine deficiency from negative feedback. Either way, behavior modified to get more dopamine, strategy adapted towards more likes. So you realize what people like and what people don't like, and you adapt the strategy of the content that you plan to post, consciously or unconsciously, towards getting that positive engagement, which gives you dopamine. And then that leads to the next step, which is new content created to be more subtly towards outcome that gives the most chance of likes. So this is not necessarily a conscious thing that you do, but you may even change your own personal belief system based off of the fact that you're getting more positive engagement from talking about something different than what is your personal belief system. A great example of this is liberals who decided suddenly that they were Trump supporters in 2016 because they got positive engagement out of it. This could be as simple as, I like to make this kind of art. People only gave me the positive engagement on this one piece of art in a different style. Now I'm more likely to make another piece of art in that style, even though it is not my primary style of making art. On and on and on. You will find that you will be trying to tailor your content more to the horde. And the thing is if you don't, then your content's just not going to get engagement. This is why many of us, like myself, don't get all that much engagement, because I really don't fall into this cycle and I make what I want. This goes double once you involve money into it. So once the person is now at least partially making their income based off of the content that they're producing, every little subtle change adds up more and more and more, and can become a much larger change in their perspective or the type of content that they're producing. And so as we look at the findings indicated that passive consumptive behaviors were prevalent among both pre-adolescent and adolescent groups, and that the gratification of entertainment effect was the primary driver behind all behaviors: passive consumption, participatory, and contributory. So if you're just watching, if you're commenting, liking, and subscribing, or if you're making content of your own, all of those are driven by the gratification of entertainment effect, meaning all of those are on the dopamine cycle, even passive consumptive behavior. The reason being is the passive consumptive behavior is you are looking for things that you like specifically. You don't sit there and watch videos if you don't like them. I don't watch makeup tutorials. I don't like them. That's not something that interests me. There are women that sit there all day watching, and men that watch makeup tutorials all fucking day. That's what they do. It's the same here. So it is part of this dopamine cycle, except now you are on the social reaction side of it as opposed to the receiving of the social reaction, if that makes sense. We're both on both sides of it most of the time. Pre-adolescent groups were more active and heavier users of TikTok than were adolescents. That's concerning, considering all the other things related to this. In line with adolescent psychology theories, the authors found that contributory behaviors were motivated by a wish to expand one's social networks, by fame-seeking, self-expression, and identity creation needs. So you're building your identity as a person based on the dopamine cycle, based on the positive reactions that you get from others, and seeking their recognition on a larger scale, which essentially equates to what they call fame seeking here. The social implications. Pre-adolescent consumers are heavier users and interact more with the TikTok SNS than adolescent consumers, including in relation to seeking out new social networks. This is potentially of great concern as children are less likely to understand the hidden dangers of online predatory and privacy issues. I would argue that that's a huge problem, but it's more than that, because now they're being wired from an earlier age than ever before to consume the content, participate in the content, like, comment, and subscribe, guys. They're being conditioned into this system so that it's even more effective. People my age, there's a point at which a lot of us will turn it off and be like, when I was a kid, we would go outside and play with a stick. And yeah, now we get called boomers too. But as one of the kind of older people in the millennial generation, I'll tell you that I've had internet as long as I can remember, essentially. Certainly I was active on the internet in the mid 90s, right, as a kid myself. So I'm not just, some old man that doesn't understand any of this stuff. Granted, I was a nerd, and most people my age weren't on BBS boards, and maybe got into it via like AOL Instant Messenger or something like that. But we did a lot of the same things then. The difference is you were paying by the hour in a lot of cases, and our parents would just say, no internet for you. And certainly you didn't have a phone in the palm of your hand. So you didn't have round the clock access. And also because we didn't have social media like this, you're kind of limited in what you could share about yourself. And most times you didn't share nearly as much information as these kids share today. And also, it was just kind of a different format. It was much more anonymous based and oriented, and we were creating new social circles around a shared interest, which is a similar thing. There weren't, like, the concept of like likes and upvotes is a little newer than that. That wasn't really common then. Of course, you'd still have the other people in chat or whatever. The other people on your message board would, give you social feedback as well, just kind of in written word. But you didn't have that instant dopamine hit of, I got 50,000 likes on this video. Interesting to note that I think that we're not going to see the point of this isn't, think of the children. We're not going to see the full effect of this kind of heavy social media use in children for another 15 or 20 years. And at that point, we'll know how much of an effect it had. And whether, people scream about it from the rooftops, point to it with a little bit of concern like I'm trying to do, or ignore it completely, which most parents seem to do, it's going to have that effect, whether you like it or not. We're going to see in 15 years what the social media generation really looks like, because the Zoomers ain't it. I know everybody thinks that, the Zoomers, they were born on the, the internet. They really weren't. The mid 2000s, we didn't really have social media like we do now. I know this is hard for people to really process because it's created a situation where the time kind of goes strangely, but we really didn't. And we definitely didn't have things on the level of TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. And also networking services like Discord, where child predators run rampant. Run absolutely rampant. And I will have some videos I'm planning on making regarding child predation on the internet, and where you will find it and how to protect your children from it, to the best of my ability, coming soon, because the topic, it's a far deeper rabbit hole than I think many people understand. But what you need to understand right now is that these kids are being affected right now when you hand them that phone and you let them scroll TikTok. It's affecting their memory, as we looked at. It's affecting their reward reception and their cycle of dopamine reaction and then repeat behavior. And as we get further into this, we're also looking at social media use and mental health among young adults. This is a little less important, I think, because I'm not entirely convinced that social media is the sole reason for it. However, in recent years, many parents, advocates, and policymakers have expressed concerns regarding the potential negative impact of social media use. Some studies have indicated that social media may be tied to negative mental health outcomes, including suicidality, loneliness, and decreased empathy. Other studies have not found evidence for harm or have indicated that social media may be beneficial to some individuals. The current correlation study examined 467 young adults for their time spent using social media, the importance of social media in their lives, and tendency to engage in vague booking, posting unclear but alarming sounding posts to get attention. Outcomes considered included general mental health symptoms, suicidal ideation, loneliness, social anxiety, and decreased empathy. Results indicated that social media use was not predictive of impaired mental health functioning, which is why I say I want to get into more the neurological side of this than the psychological side of it. When we're talking about mental health in regards to social media, it does seem to be that a person who is predisposed towards these more extreme mental health outcomes like suicidal ideation, and expressing loneliness and anxieties and things like that online, or even further with people who are expressing delusions and hallucinations and things, that those people were probably already mentally ill, and maybe social media didn't help, maybe it exacerbated it, but I don't think that there's evidence at this point to suggest, and if anybody has studies that they could show me that kind of lead me in that direction, I would love to look at them. But for right now, I'm going to rest on, it does not seem to be that social media causes suicidality, depression, or anything like that. Rather, it may exacerbate people who are already experiencing those things. And in some cases, it may even help them. There's certainly anecdotal evidence for that as well. So we're going to kind of write this one off, although if I didn't bring it up at all, this would be considered kind of incomplete. And then the last is looking at Instagram being built on a single chemical. Obviously, this is going to be the dopamine effect, right? And this is what we've already discussed. And it's essentially social media is built on dopamine is the kind of important part. Now, this is obviously not a scholarly article, though it is from a scholarly website, but it is what it is. It expresses it really well. It says, as addressed in this interview, large social media companies like Instagram utilize this psychological weakness, they're talking about the dopamine cycle that we've been talking about, and develop notification algorithms where a bunch of likes are restrained before it is released. Now, what they mean there is it will give you your likes all at once. So they don't necessarily, this is the interesting little social engineering trick that they do. But you might get one like on your post, and then another, and then another. It's going to actually hold them for a period of time so that it can overwhelm you with some. Now, this isn't all social media sites, but certainly TikTok uses this and every other trick in the book. Reason being, you will initially feel down upon posting and only getting little likes. But when notifications stream in, the brain will instinctively produce a surge of dopamine, creating a rapid flow of positive recognition, leaving us with pleasurable sensations. This explains why social media is so addicting. They absolutely do that. They withhold your likes from you for a time so that you'll get them all at once and you'll get the big massive hit of dopamine. Now, why is any of this important, and what is the purpose of it? What am I trying to get across here? You, me, all of us are posting content, posting things on social media, getting the likes and positive feedback, and then doing it again. We're all going through this dopamine cycle with social media. It is undeniable that social media likes have the factor into the dopamine effect and the dopamine cycle. 100%. There is nobody who in any type of serious neurological or psychological science that will dispute that there is a engagement in the dopamine cycle by social media. Right. So this was a lengthy video, and I left a lot on the cutting room floor on top of that. But what does this all really mean in the long run? What am I supposed to take away from it, you might ask? And the simple answer is break the cycle yourself. Realize that you are being manipulated. Even right now as I'm speaking to you, there's something going on over here that is meant to engage your dopamine receptors. Everything about this video is not, so I built around a frame around it so that you might pay attention, because unfortunately the shortening of our attention span is also a side effect of the TikTok effect. What can you do? Well, nothing really. If you're a parent like I am, you can be aware of this problem with your kids, and you can keep an eye on that and try and prevent them from getting too deep into the dopamine cycle on social media. Keep an eye on what they're doing. I'm not going to say run around and steal all your kids' phones and tablets and everything, because life's a bit more tricky than that. And hey, my mom, when I was a kid, took away all my video games. That sure as fuck didn't stop me from playing them, especially later on in life. So I don't think that the clutching of pearls is going to help anything. But you can set a good example for your kids, and you can keep an eye on them. What do you do for the people around you? Try and engage with people outside of social media as best you can. I know a lot of the working class types do that. I feel like a lot of the, perpetually online types don't ever think to do that. So that's something you can do, but mostly just be aware that this is a problem. Be aware that you are being manipulated by the algorithm itself, whether or not somebody is specifically leading you to a defined outcome. And I think a lot of times people are like, oh, well, the media and the social big tech companies, they want me to believe this politically. They want me to believe this about my health, and they want me to believe this about da-da-da-da-da, on and on and on. But what then they forget is they also want you to like this specific kind of video. They want you to play this specific kind of music in your spare time, and they want you to play this specific kind of video game. They want you to be having topics about this meme and that meme, and not necessarily the company itself, but rather the kind of organic hive mind that is created on these places. And even 4chan, it has the hive mind and the dopamine effect. You cannot escape this if you are online. I mean, you can't escape this if you're a human, but online exacerbates it, because in real life, you're likely to get a thumbs up here and there, a pat on the head here and there from the people that you interact with personally. But online, it could be thousands and thousands of people at any given time. And you're probably not even listening to me because you're getting dopamine from looking at this cute dog video. And that's fine. I totally understand that. That's why it's there. But if you are listening to me, maybe just keep aware of things. And so, until next time, guys, I'm Accent, and I'll see you then. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video and all that fucking bullshit. Don't listen to me. If you want to subscribe, that'd be great. If you want to share the video, that'd be great. But, yeah, don't buy into that shit. That shit works because you fucking do it. Stop doing it.